Hey, can you hear me?
Hey, yeah, I gotcha. Was
So I'm still trying to post in the group. It's just this thing's running very slowly.
yeah, mine kept freezing. My picture kept freezing.
Yeah, that's all
Uh,
right. How you going?
How's it going? Oh, not
It's
bad.
good. It's good over here. Right, yeah.
So,
So do you want to kick us off with your proposition?
sure. Yeah. I just wanted to. Hopefully, we got some people watching. I think this is a really important and interesting topic.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think you and me agree on. We both, first of all, we both agree on the existence of objective truth. Correct.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think there's a lot of I mentioned this in the last debate, the idea of debating of whether it's like I'm going to prove you wrong and me right. That's not really we both agree on this because I know you got into a discussion with one of the other guys in the page, right? About it's the preponderance of the evidence. You're not able to prove one side correct, right? Do you agree
yeah.
with
Well, I
that?
mean, like, all we can really do is have a discussion and see which one seems more plausible.
Exactly.
Um, but I certainly think the way people behave is a good indicator of what's more likely to be true. But
Right.
yeah,
Yeah. And again, I said that I think the way people behave, like people can't really live in a world with subjective truth or as if subjective truth is really fine and dandy because people are always afraid of what somebody else's subjective truth is going to do to them. That's why we lock doors and we defend ourselves and all that. So
yeah,
yeah. So anyways, the debate is that the existence of a higher power or a god is required for objective truth, objective morality, and objective right and wrong to exist. And I'm kind of thinking in terms of absolute truth and kind of using the same idea there, objective or absolute truth and morality, right? And then you're arguing that it doesn't need a higher power.
no. I'm arguing that it's pretty self-emergent, um, and I don't doubt that it's been represented as a higher power. Like for example, in lots of different religious literature, there's lots of people around the world trying to figure out what the truth is, and they've represented that through they've certainly represented that through the existence of a higher power, but it doesn't need an actual like for to use clumsy phrasing, it doesn't need an actual sky god, for example, or it doesn't need the existence of a more powerful being. um, it doesn't need that to exist. It's just self-emergent.
Okay, and so we'll get into that.
Yeah.
And I also, because I got this question before, is the idea that I'm not saying that atheists can't be good people, because I'm clearly not saying that. That I
Yeah.
believe that the idea of right and wrong is inherent within our beings, and that in my view, it's placed there by the higher power. That this right and wrong is placed within us, and so we know what right and wrong is. And biblically speaking, it says that, and I believe it's Romans, that everybody acts on these values of right and wrong. So I'm not saying
Yeah.
that bad people can't be, or that atheists can't be good people, because I know that in fact it may be the case that some atheists are better than some supposed Christians or something like that, or very religious people. So definitely. And also, if anybody's listening, if they saw your debate with, you just had it yesterday, I think,
Yeah.
on,
Yeah. Well,
yeah. So I watched that one. Interesting debate. That was actually a great debate because that was kind of a search for the truth. I think a lot of that.
yeah.
So,
A few people did characterize it like that. It was pretty good.
yeah,
So why did you hit us up with your reasoning for
yeah.
why you need a high power?
So the basic kind of equation here is evil. If there is an evil, then there must be a good, and if there is a good, then there must be. That implies at least that there is a moral law, and if there is a universal moral law, and if there is a universal moral law, then there must be a transcendent moral lawgiver, which we would call and that's kind of what I'm terming the word higher power or a god.
Yeah.
And that, like Ravi Zacharias says, and the scientific premise are true, then we're all random collocations of atoms of time plus matter plus chance. Then we will have no moral perspective or basis to stand on and condemn the actions of one man who beheads another or the man who enslaves another. There is no moral law, and we are free to do as we wish with no rightful repercussions. And so that goes back to the basic statement that evil exists, therefore good exists, therefore moral law exists, therefore there must be a moral lawgiver, that these ideas of moral right and wrong are prescriptive. And when you get a prescription from your doctor, it has to be prescribed by a doctor that is someone that has a kind of a higher place in society with the ability to write out prescriptions. And so to get that prescription, you have to have a prescriber. And same thing with the idea of a moral law of right and wrong.
Yeah. So this is very much the where there is a watch, there must be a watchmaker argument.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Look. I just think so. I agree that let's step through your logic. I agree with the where there is a right, there must be a wrong. That's just a true statement about any gradient characterizations. So, for example, if you're going to put something on a spectrum, if it goes one way, it goes the other. That's fine. Where I think it becomes a bit more tenuous is the idea that is to then say on top of that where what was it? Then where there is a law, there must be a lawgiver. Like that doesn't seem self-evident to me at all. What can you elaborate on why it is that you think that is true?
Well, I think we would look at everything that we see in the world that is created, such as law, and we realize that law actually did have a lawgiver, right? That is man's law, the law that we have created, say Congress or something like that, right? The Hammurabi's law. It was created by some human. Where did the universal idea of a law come from? And we say that the entire universal idea of a law, a right and wrong, must come from outside of man himself for it to be objectively true. Because otherwise, we're just saying, well, I believe this, you believe that, then we're both right, or we're both wrong. I guess we're both, but then even then I'm saying we're both right. So I'm again calling upon a universal reality of right and wrong. And where could that come from except outside of ourselves?
Okay. Okay. Don't you kind of run into the does this same line of logic justify that the world was created by, like, physically was created by a god as well, or is it unique to morality?
No, using the same argument, the what is it? Aristotle's first mover, right? So,
Yeah,
that goes into it, but I mean, we're not obviously getting into that. But yeah, that is kind of the same idea.
Yeah. So the problem with this line of argumentation, I've heard it before, is that it suffers from an infinite recursion logic problem, which is to say that if you point out like something has been sufficiently complex that it must have had a creator, then presumably the creator is also complex such that must have had a creator also. So, for example, when you're talking about if there is a right and wrong, therefore there must be a right and wrong giver, well then where did the right and wrong giver get their right and wrong from?
Right, and I understand that argument, that question anyways. And that's why I could say back to Aristotle's, the unmoved first mover, or the uncaused first cause. That is that God exists outside of time, space, and matter. And again, I'll just say higher power, we'll say God, because kind of the term that we would use is for someone that exists above and beyond human is be God. And so God exists outside of time, space, and matter, which is what we are made of, right? We're made of matter. We exist in time and space. And so all of time, space, and matter are caused, and they have a causer, but that causer doesn't himself necessarily need a cause.
Yeah, but then
that's where the infinite regression ends, is that it's not infinite.
But there's no reason. You've just kind of fiated that, right? Like, why can't morals exist outside of time, space, and matter? it seems logical that they would as well, because morals clearly aren't made out of they're not material. So why can't morals exist outside of time, space, and matter?
Well, morals do need material to be acted on, though, right? Because morals can't just exist in and of themselves by themselves. They need.
Oh, no, that's not true. Like,
well,
like we can have a conversation about something like so we could say, for example, in theory, if someone had the ability to just like disintegrate the earth with the snap of their fingers, that's something which could never happen, but we could agree that it's wrong. So morals don't need material to exist.
We could agree it's wrong, but I kind of go to an argument that I would bring up myself, and you brought up in the last debate you had, which is there are people that actually think that's right? That's a good thing, that we should wipe.
Yeah, but they're wrong.
Like, I mean, you and me agree that they're wrong, right? We agree they're wrong. Most people agree they're wrong. However, there are a lot of people out there, especially people in power, that do believe, Georgia Guidestones, things like that do believe that humans are a cancer upon the earth. So then you get into
but they don't actually believe that. This is the thing. I fully get that they say that, right? Like they're largely virtue signaling attention seekers, but you know,
I think most
they're
of
not
them
killing
are.
They're not killing themselves. They're not killing everyone else. They don't think humans are a cancer. They're just, you know, possessed by some sort of absurd, corrupt ideology. Like if they really believe that, they would be out there killing themselves and other people. But the real question I want to know is, right, like, because why is it that your immovable first mover is the one which doesn't need a cause, right? So, but because when I asked, like, you know, why can't morals exist out of time, space, and matter? Your response is, well, they need matter to be acted upon, and I gave you a hypothetical of something which could never be acted upon, could never materially exist, but we could agree would violate like a moral code. So, and that's true of any hypothetical. We always hypothesize, you know, like trolley problem, the train tracks with the people laying on them and all that stuff. That never happens, right? But that is the foundation for lots of sources of morality. Why is it that morals can't exist out of time, space, and matter?
Well, I think human morals.
What does that mean?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm getting a huge echo on my own. So that's better. So I think it's not to say that these morals are that they don't exist outside of time, space, and matter, because we'd say that they were created by a being outside of time, space, and matter. But in order for them to really at least be enacted in this world, they need time, space, and matter to be applied.
Yeah, but if you admit that it could exist outside of time, space, and matter, then the need for a creator disappears.
Well, the creator himself exists outside of time, space, and matter, because without a creator, a higher being, then time, space, and matter is all we have, right?
Right. No, hang on. But you said just a moment ago, sure, they could exist out of time, space, and matter, but their creator also exists out of time, space, and matter. So then I ask you again, why doesn't the creator need a creator? Because earlier on, what made for you, in your logic, what made the creator not require a creator of their own was the fact that they uniquely existed out of time, space, and matter when everything else didn't. But if morals also exist out of time, space, and matter, then why do they need a creator?
Well, that's a good question. Again, the idea that God needs a creator, what we perceive as God doesn't need a creator, right? I mean, if you think of just physicalism, that time, space, and matter is all there is, then how did it pop into matter? So there is something outside of, I think in their behavior, people do believe in that there is more than just the physical world, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you can think of like
in a moral world too.
Yeah, moral world. So there is more than just physicalism, which doesn't really make sense because you think of things like thoughts and actions.
Yeah, absolutely.
That are not just chemical reactions.
Yeah, exactly. But then that begs the question: why is it then, given that we know that there are things which exist outside the physical world which don't necessarily require, like, if like this is the problem with your line of argument. If things which exist outside the physical world require a creator too, then the creator requires a creator. If they don't need a creator, then there's no reason to believe that your proposition is correct.
Well, I'm not saying they need a creator outside of the physical world, that, because we'd say God is truth, God is love, God is justice, that he is pure. These attributes are that he is pure. These attributes, that he is these attributes, and so then he creates time, space, and matter, and he imparts his attributes on us.
But like the problem there is that for one, you're unnecessarily connecting the physical world from the non-physical world, but by inferring that the person outside of time, space, and matter got involved and created time, space, and matter, to which then and then that ruins your uniqueness argument, because then why is it not necessary that something created the God? If these worlds are going to bleed into each other, like for example, here's what I reckon, right, is the most likely scenario. There is a physical world which is the properties of dead matter. It's not imbued with anything. It's not imbued with any kind of morality inherently. It's just what it is. And sometimes it's rocks. Sometimes the unique chemical forms create life, and that's us, right? But that says absolutely nothing about how we should act, right? You could be an alive person with who could pay attention to, like, gradations in the paint behind me. But the reason we don't do that is because we're trying to find out how to live. How we found out how to live was that we, created stories and stuff like that, and try and figured out how to do moral codes. And in that, once we figured out that there probably is a right and wrong, we create representations of what that right and wrong might look like. And that is where you get the God is justice, God is that. You can have a divine representation of what you think the ultimate moral person could be, but that ultimately is not that is a creation. That is something we have created, not that created us. Which isn't to take away from its like seriousness. Like if we've created something which is divine and pure, and which is the ultimate goal to follow, then that is some sort of miracle. That's something which should be respected and revered. But that's not but that doesn't necessarily. There's no real logic which defines why it must have created us for the moral code to exist.
Well, you did say that we search to find the moral code, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So then where does the moral code come from? Because if it doesn't come from some transcendent being outside of us, then where does it come from?
Oh, okay. Survival urge. So in the last debate, when the guy asked me to define what morality was, it's like, what's good for you, what's good for your family, your society, your environment, and maybe there's something outside of that today, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year. So the moral instinct comes from survival, because there are some actions which just disintegrate the society and everyone dies, or they collapse other societies around them. And there are some actions which lead to everything sustaining in that sort of equilibrium for a long amount of time, and that's where the moral code comes from.
So is survival the ultimate good?
Yeah. Well, again, not just survival for you and everyone else onwards, but yes.
Okay, so if I believe that survival for me, that's my reality, survival for me and maybe my family is the ultimate good.
Yeah.
And I can act upon that?
Well, so you would be acting better than someone who believes survival for no one, right? So the person who's like, human beings are a cancer, kill everyone, you would be more correct than they were. Like that, you would be more moral than all humans are cancer. But if I was to say, well, you're only interested in you and your family, I'm interested in me, my family, and your family, and the society we live in, then I would be more moral than you. So obviously gradations.
Okay, but again, we're calling upon some moral truth that's outside of us. And you're saying that it's kind of something that exists and we seek to find it. And
yeah, but what it is survival. Like it's not
what if
something.
It's not survival, though?
But I mean, what else is it then?
Well, what if it's survival for other animals?
Well, that's encompassed in my definition. Survival for you, family, society, environment. So like environment counts other animals.
Okay, but some animals' survival means the extinction of other animals, right? So you have to choose which animal is most important.
Very, very rarely. So there aren't many animals who rely on the extinction of other animals, because otherwise their food source would dry up and they would die. So there, and the animals which make other animals go extinct, everyone tends to get pretty upset about that. So that's us, for example. We do that, and look what it's doing to our environment, right? Like our ecosystems are dying. It's messing with our ability to keep the earth cool and whatnot. So absolutely, yes. If you make other animals extinct, that is likely to hurt you as well, which is why you need that kind of equilibrium effect.
Well, some animals you can make extinct and it doesn't matter. I mean, we've got a lot of animals that have gone extinct and don't seem to be any worse off for it. We've over the last 2 centuries, we've probably made a few animals go extinct at least, and we're better off than we were 100 years ago, right?
Well, is the better off necessitated by them going extinct? So for example, if there is a way for us to be better off and they won't be extinct, that would be a more moral action. If them going extinct was necessary for our flourishing, then I suppose you could play the numbers game on, did the overall quality of life increase? Like, that's a difficult question for sure. But, just like there are difficult maths problems doesn't mean that there isn't an answer at the end of them. It just makes it harder to figure out. But
I'm saying that they've gone extinct and we are better off. So I'm not saying that we are better off because they've gone extinct, but I'm saying that those animals going extinct is neither right nor wrong because we're better off. So it's more likely right than wrong.
No. Like if an animal has gone extinct for no reason at all, for no gain, that is wrong.
But why? I mean, we've seen that the world is better off than it was 100 years ago, and we've lost
because there are
millions of animals.
Hang on. When you keep saying, "But the world is better off," I get that it is a more complex question if the animal goes extinct and that causes the world to be better off. Okay, I get that, but what I'm saying is that if the animal goes extinct, right, and we are no better off because of that, then that was the wrong thing to do. We wouldn't snap our fingers and make animals go extinct for fun. Right, like there's no gain there. So the reason which it's more wrong is because there is less survival happening. When there is more survival of more things, that is the moral right.
But again, we as humans view ourselves as the highest being, right? The most important being on Earth.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
you would agree with that. Yeah.
Yep,
so.
Definitely.
So the fact that we are better off than we were 100 years ago, whether it's because of or it just happens to be that we are better off, and while these animals have gone extinct, then the animals going extinct was more of an amoral act, right? No morality at all.
No. Again, you can have gradations, right? So you can have it's not like you're either moral or immoral. You can be more. There can be every step in between. So, for example, if I'm, for example, playing with my sister, right? Like, and I've got a good relationship with my sister. If I upset her in the game by making fun of her, that doesn't make me an immoral person because I've done one thing which wasn't perfect. But if I played the game, and I made her so upset that she'd never want to play with me again, that would be an even more immoral action. And if I hurt her, that would be an even more immoral action. But if I was to say, play with her so she was bored, that is more moral than the previous thing. If I was to play with her so that she was entertained, that would be more moral again. Entertained and wants to play again, that is even more moral. So you can have steps, right? So that to make it relevant to the animal question, just because we're better off now, that certainly means that we've done some things right. That means that we've done a bunch of moral actions. That's not to say that there were more moral actions we could have done. So for example, if we could be where we are now and more animals are alive, that would be a comparatively more moral action.
But what if we needed to get rid of those animals in order to make ourselves better off? Then you would say that would be moral, right?
Yeah, so that's what I said earlier on. Do you remember when I was like, does one necessitate? So if it's the question that we needed to get rid of these animals in order to survive, then I think it is a complex question, but not one which doesn't find an answer. So for example, viruses, right? We constantly kill diseases in order for us to survive. And the reason we do that is because they are the ones who need everyone else to die for, them to survive, So these are complex questions, and we can have questions about who is gaining the most meaning out of life, who has the greater numbers, something like that. Those are complex questions, I agree. But and the answers aren't self-emergent. I, for example, if I was asked, in my gut, what do I reckon between a parasite which wants to kill everything else except itself and us I would say that we're the preserving us would be the more moral action. But that's the same as having a complicated maths problem, which or a complicated scientific problem. Just because you don't know the answer doesn't mean there isn't one out there. And presumably your argument rests on that premise as well, right? Like, we really have no specific idea what the divine creator, what their morality would be. And just because we don't know it yet and it might be hard to figure out doesn't mean that the answer isn't there. So yes, there is an answer to the where one has to trade for the other.
Well, again, I go to the idea that it seems more like a subjective viewpoint, because we're taking the viewpoint from humans. I would think that the virus themselves, if they could tell us, they would say, no, it's more important that viruses survive, and we need to use humans as hosts and possibly kill them off to make sure that they don't kill us off. Or animals could say the same thing. I mean,
yeah, but the problem is that it's not subjective, because it's not like obviously I've got some self-interest in the game of us versus the viruses, but here's a good. If my criteria is maximum survival for the most amount of species, and that species to survive needs to just kills all humans, then when all the humans are dead, it will be dead also. So in the long term, no one survives. So that is a less moral action than if we kill it off now, so we continue to survive. I've preserved one species. They have killed two species. So that's nothing. There's nothing subjective about that. That's just logic. Mine led to more survival in the end.
But there are literally trillions of these virus cells, right? So we're saving, and they could adapt to take on the lion or take on monkeys or some other animals. They could go into those animals and infect them. So could I say that, there's 7 billion people and 7 trillion viruses, then to save these viruses and kill off the humans might be better.
Right. So that's the simple utilitarianism. But here's the problem again, is that if they can adapt to other animals and kill them too, then all the animals die, then they die. Do you know what I mean? Like, this only works if you narrow the framing to a point where do you know what I mean? Like your example, your thought experiment only works if you narrow the time frame a bunch, and you only restrict it to like one animal versus the other. But the logic of your statement of the killing off one species and adapt means that they would then kill off that species and adapt, then kill off the next and adapt, and they're going to run out, which
perhaps
means that well, there is no perhaps. The logic of your statement was that the only reason which to go back to the beginning, right? The only reason we would need to kill them to survive is if they were killing all of us, which means that they will then kill off, and then then your thing was, well, then they can adapt something else, which means they kill off all of those things, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which means in the long term, no one lives. So that's immoral because there is no survival there.
Well, if it were a virus, animals don't go around trying to kill viruses, right? They don't have the ability to. So if they were to kill off humans, only humans have the ability to kill all other animals, including viruses and everything, right? So if we were to say that the most important thing is the future of the greatest number of living species, then, this is kind of actually the viewpoint that these people are saying, let's kill off, that humans are a cancer to the earth. We need to kill off all, and of course, like you said, all other humans is what they always actually mean. Ted Turner is the world's largest landowner, and he's one of these people that says we need to, reduce population, et cetera, et cetera. And so if we go with that, then we could say the greatest number of species might exist without humans. But you and I would both agree that humans are the most important thing, but from different viewpoints. That I'm saying if humans are important because we're created with reason in the image of a higher power.
Well, but here's the problem, though, is that, perhaps what they're saying is that you have to kill 7 billion people in order to save all of the other animals. You could also just have those 7 billion people have minor adjustments to their behavior, and the animals would live too. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's why they're stupid, because they haven't figured out that you could just not act like species extinction. Like we could act in a way which preserves the life of other species, and therefore we'd get the best of both worlds. But the reason the virus thing doesn't work, for your example, is that the premise of why we would need to kill the viruses is that the viruses are killing us, right? And if that's true, and then they can adapt to kill other species, then they will kill all of them. Yep. and then they won't have a food source anymore. So in the long term, the type of virus you were describing, which we need to kill, will kill everyone, everything. So there will be no survival. And there's nothing subjective about that. There's no the virus has been like, oh, well, you know, I think I'm important too, because they're dead in the long term as well, right? So that's why that will be an immoral action, because in the long term, everything would die.
Well, I'm saying that the virus might, and this maybe is a bad thought experiment because it's kind of a ridiculous one, but the virus might say that we could kill off humans and then we could live with the other animals because the other animals aren't killing us. So obviously,
okay, so yep, hang on. But the more moral action would be to live with the other animals and not kill off the humans. Just adapt straight away. That would be more moral.
well, again, we're saving trillions and trillions of virus.
No, you're not, because if they like, there's no reason for the viruses. But you're not, because if the premise is that the viruses can adapt to other animals and live sustainably there without killing them all off, just do that first. There's no reason to kill off an entire species before doing that.
Well, but it's a battle between man and virus, is what I'm saying. And so if man is trying to wipe out these viruses, then the virus to wipe out man first, and then they can live with other species, but they can't live with mankind because mankind is trying to get rid of these viruses to better mankind.
Right, but if they don't hurt us, we wouldn't be trying to get rid of them. Like, there are lots of viruses which plague only animals, and we can't give two shits about them, right? So if viruses can live sustainably with other animals and they don't affect us, then there is no incentive for us to kill them. And we wouldn't. Why would we? It's a waste of our time.
Well, if they do, but ones that harm us.
Right, but then they're not. Do you see what I mean? Why this is why like, if they harm us, right, then fine, we'll get rid of them because they are killing us, and that would be fine. But like, if it's true that they can live sustainably with other animals, then they should just do that.
So, but just live in animals and forget about humans.
Absolutely, that would be the more moral thing to do, because apparently when they live with us, they kill us all, and when they live with animals, everything's hunky-dory. So, and there are some viruses like that, you know, like there are lots of little bugs and things which live in other living organisms, and they create their own little ecosystems and stuff, and there's nothing wrong with that because it's just mutually beneficial survival. Yeah.
Okay.
We've had a fair bit of time trying to poke holes in my moral source. I'd like if I could try and poke a few holes in yours.
Okay.
With the creative thing. So here's the first challenge I'd like to say is, like, it's kind of similar to what we're doing before. Why is it, right? Why is it that if the morals are so complex, or the morals exist, you know, somewhere, that they need a creator? Why does the creator not then need a creator? Like, what qualities does the creator have which is not shared by anything else, which makes it exempt from the requirement of another creator?
Well, that's kind of the definition of a creator, and it's not that time, space, and matter need a creation because they have a cause. Like, science has shown that even Dawkins says it has the appearance of being created, although he gets into the infinite recursion, right? We're implanted by aliens and blah, blah, crazy stuff. But that time, space, and matter have a beginning. So they need a beginner. And
well, that's not true. Like,
science argues that it's the Big Bang. So
just quickly, with the time, space, and matter have a beginning, then they need a beginner. Like, that to my knowledge is just debunked, right? Like, there's entire books about it, like Something from Nothing, that we know
that is
how,
right? That is science. I mean, according to science, that's the beginning. That time, space, and matter come from absolutely nothing. And so I'd say if we come from absolutely nothing, then then these moral laws are just subjective to humans. These are just things that we believe.
Why though? Like,
well, what's the difference? What's the difference between a human and a rock? We came from the same point, right? We all came from nothing. We all evolved from the same basic species. But everybody knows if I go and I kick a rock, then they're like, "Huh, you kicked the rock, weirdo." But if I go and I kick a child, then they're like, "Oh, that's a terrible person." Right.
Well, the rock can't feel pain. That's a pretty significant difference.
Well, but
like,
did you ask the rock? Did you ask the rock?
No, we know the rock can't feel pain, right? Because we know where pain comes from. We know the science behind senses and stuff like that. So if there's no capacity to suffer, like the rock has no capacity to suffer, so it's not a
Okay, how
Do
about
you
an
know what
ant though? Because I mean, you kill roaches in your house, probably, right? I assume.
Absolutely.
Well, you guys have all kinds of nasty animals down there, so
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm sure you kill a lot of them.
Yeah, and largely speaking, like when humans just kill bugs and ants which don't meaningfully disrupt their quality of life, that probably is immoral. It's just the sort of kind of minor immorality we don't tend to focus on.
Okay, but people don't see that as immoral, right? People don't seem to care that. Now, if I go kick a cat or a dog, then people are like, "Oh, that's not right." But if I
Oh
kick,
yeah, yeah. So,
if I go kill a small cockroach or something, I lived in New
yeah.
York, used to have those, right? Kill, yeah,
Yeah,
you
but
definitely kill
that
those.
doesn't mean that doesn't mean they can't intellectually come to the conclusion that it is. So, for example, we kill ants and cockroaches because we just view them to be insignificant. We're like, oh, that's not really immoral. But I can guarantee you, if some hyper intelligent alien species came down to Earth and started killing us because we were ants and cockroaches to them, right? And then we had an argument with them. We're like, hang on, we matter too, guys. And they said, well, you to us, we are to you what ants and cockroaches are to, then suddenly we'd be like, oh, actually, yeah, maybe we shouldn't kill them. So we can obliviously make immoral decisions. That doesn't mean they're not immoral.
Well, I think people are just acting subjectively, right? That they are that the objective truth is that humans matter, and less so maybe that certain animals matter, but other animals don't matter. Animals that annoy us, that we realize internally are not important to our daily life. That
Well,
I mean, even animals we eat, right? We
yeah.
eat some
Well,
animals,
I'm
and we look at
vegetarian.
so maybe you say, well, eating plants, right? You kill plants for your own survival.
Yeah,
So
but they don't have capacity to suffer either.
I don't know. I never asked, right? But
Well,
some people
no,
eat
no, no.
animals, right?
No. The capacity to suffer is not something which you ask someone and then they tell you. It's if they have nerves, right? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, we know how this works, so we know what has the capacity to suffer and what doesn't.
Well, I think there's scientific question about the cells within a plant.
But if they have nerves,
I mean, heck, there are plants that eat animals, right? The
oh
Venus
yeah, like Venus
flytrap and things
flytrap.
like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, that's
can we?
necessary for their survival.
Yeah.
And
So
I
I
would
guess
say
would
that
we? Do they feel pain? I don't know. It seems like.
well, so if we would, I mean, like, I don't know if what that's character. Like, they have those little things. I don't know if that's characteristic of pain or sensation. But yeah, look, maybe if Venus flytraps can feel pain, stomping them for fun probably wouldn't be a moral thing to do.
But we do. So people eat cows. We raise animals for human feed.
Yeah.
But nobody would eat a human. So we say, okay, it's okay. It's moral to eat a cow for survival,
Yeah,
but it's not moral to eat a human. And of course, lots of people think it's not immoral to eat a dog either.
But that's just saying the answer isn't obvious, right? So there, for example, there are like maths questions and science questions which the answers don't come to. But it's like it's not really apparent right why it's important. Like you can look up at the sky and be like, oh, it's raining, and you wouldn't really, but way back in the day, people might have not thought, oh shit, what's the scientific explanation for this? Just because something isn't emergent to our immediate attention doesn't mean that it's without an answer. So, like lots of people, for example, wouldn't think twice about meat eating, and then they go to an abattoir, right, and they see what happens. They're like, holy God, this is immoral to me now, because I've seen it. It's the same way where people raise chickens, like they eat chickens all their life and then they raise chickens and they can't bring themselves to kill it. Once things are brought to people's attention, then they do tend to be more morally active about it. The same way in which, someone watches a bloody, documentary about how complex ant civilization is, and it's commentated by that guy. Who's the bloke who does all of the animal life commentary? I can't remember his name, but they watch a complex documentary about ant society, and then the next time they see an ant, they're a little bit less, that they're more hesitant before stepping on it. When things get brought to our attention, then they certainly do. The moral consequences do become more obvious. It's just largely we tend to ignore them.
I think it's not moral, but it's like, because if I said killing a chicken and I take you to a factory farm and people look at how chickens are raised and they say, oh, that seems immoral, but then they'll still eat chicken. They might, in fact, I would bet that a week later that person would be going to the store and buying chicken.
Oh,
but he would
once
be
it's
more
out of their
likely
mind.
maybe to buy one from a free range or something like that.
Yeah. So they've identified. Yeah, so they identified a more moral action, right? They're like, before I ate this chicken, and now I'm going to try and eat the chicken which isn't going through that stuff I saw. But people forget things, right? We would be dead as a species if everything we ever saw was in the forefront of our attention all of the time. Like, that would absolutely collapse our brains. We necessarily ignore things. Like, the whole reason, like, think about rooms, for example, right? Walls. The reason they're not covered with bright, colorful things in the rooms, we like to make them nice and tidy, is so we can ignore as much as we can at any one time. Even this video, right? Like, it's trained that we are in the center so that we can focus not on the walls around you or that little corner I can see there or the light in the bottom left corner. Like, we ignore things all of the time as a necessity to just live as humans, right? But that doesn't mean that if things are brought to our attention, we see the moral consequences of them. And it certainly doesn't mean if we start ignoring things that our ignoring them suddenly means that they are without moral consequence, because we knew if we drew them to our attention, they would be.
Again, I think it's not the act of eating the chicken, killing the cow. It's the method in which it was killed. So if I say, look, we're going to kill a human, we're going to kill him humanely. We're going to, he's a prisoner and he's going to be killed by lethal injection. So it's very humane. Now, will you eat him? I think virtually nobody would say yes. Well, because we realize humans are a higher order of species.
If they were in a position where that was the only food source, then they would. Like, if it was, you're all going to die, your family's going to die, your children are going to die if you do not feed up this meal, then they probably would eat them. Likewise,
sometimes, but mostly no, because we see there have been obviously accounts, the Donner Party. I mean, they were looked down upon for a long time, right? Because they actually, some of them refused to eat people. They said, I would rather starve to death than ever touch a human being.
Did they have a child with them? Did they say I'd rather watch my child starve to death? Like, because I reckon some people can.
I think so.
Well, I mean, we'd have to, maybe there are exceptions, but, like, to be honest, I think most people, if they had to look at their own kin, watch them die or eat someone who is dead, then they would, or some awful person, then they probably would make that hard decision. But with the chicken thing, for example, right? Like, at the point where we can artificially create meat, I absolutely think then people would be more reticent about eating chicken. You know how they're making about stem cells and everything? Like, if there's the artificial meat things, which are exactly the same, but for the fact that no animals suffered, then I think that would up the moral cost of eating the animals, and people would be more likely to eat the artificial stuff.
If you geek that, so I eat some vegetarian stuff. I don't, but I don't have a problem with eating meat, right? I do eat meat. It's got a different taste. There's prices as well. I think people will choose more on price than anything else. So if you got it to the same price, I think people would still eat chicken. A lot of people would still eat chicken, even if you got it to the same everything else, because there would be like, well, so that's a whole nother story. But I think people realize there's a difference between eating animals and eating people, because there's a difference between human rights and animals have no rights.
Yeah, I mean, clearly animals do have some rights, though. Like, if you get a pet dog and kick it and rape it, then you're going to be arrested.
Well, that's rights that humans have placed on animals. There is a moral code that you shouldn't just beat an animal for no purpose. That's interesting.
Right? So what you've said there is that humans have created a moral code and applied it to animals. Why can't we create a moral code and apply it to ourselves? Why do we need a god?
Well, these moral codes come from within us. They are planted within us by a higher power. That's kind of that's the main argument, right? So we got a minute and a half left.
Then who planted it? Who planted it in the higher power?
So the higher power, the basic understanding of the higher power is that he doesn't need a first cause. I mean, you're saying the universe doesn't need a first cause, right? Carl Sagan, I think it was, used to say that it's just there, right? And he accepted that. But we more scientific study has shown that the universe has a beginning, right? And where did that beginning come from? It came from allegedly it came from nothing, but we would say, well, actually, it came from a creator. And even Dawkins says that it appears to have come from a creator.
If it came from a creator, then it had already begun. The creator existed. So then what created? Do you see what I mean? Like, why this?
I understand what you're saying, but I'm saying that the creator doesn't need. God himself is an eternal, always existed being. So we live in time, space, and matter. And then outside of time, space, and matter, then that is God outside of this universe.
And
That
morals.
doesn't
We
need to be
agree
given,
that
right?
morals also exist outside of time, space, and matter.
What we would think of as morals, yeah. And so again, I was saying that the right and wrong exists outside of time, space, and matter, and it was put into time, space, and matter by that higher power. And if otherwise we lose, if we don't have some kind of platform to place our view of right and wrong on, then we're just, it's again, you even mentioned the Nietzsche, and I tried to get him in the last debate I had.